Hello lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, welcome back to another video. The year is 2000. As the world recovered from Y2K and every wannabe Sigma's favourite character Patrick Bateman was born, and one of the best worst movies of all time, Battlefield Earth, graced our screens, the gaming scene was dominated by games like The Sims, Diablo 2, Majora's Mask, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. A small indie team out of Italy by the name of Naps Team released a game by the name of Gekido. Starting out in 1993 and developing out of Sicily, Italy, thankfully they're still going until this day, releasing a game by the name of Baldo the Guardian Owls in 2021. And even though the game has mixed reviews, for the most part it's more to do with the bad port rather than the game itself being bad, so hopefully Naps Team continue to develop games going forward. Published by Infogrames in PAL regions under the title Gekido Urban Fighters and releasing in April of 2000, the game also released via Interplay in June of the same year for the American regions. Sadly, the game didn't sell very well, selling an estimated 100,000 copies. What makes this game interesting, however, at least at the time, is the fact it had a very Japanese and anime art style.
What's with him?
Oh, he's been like this for a couple of days now. Figure the game's getting to him. You're not Japanese, Pete!
Upon doing my research for this video, I actually found out that anime is massive in Italy, with Italy being one of the biggest consumers of anime in the West. And with there being a boom in the mid-90s, it actually makes sense as to why Gekido has the art style it does. Another interesting thing about this game's development is the fact the music is provided by Fatboy Slim and Apartment 26. There are other artists that worked on this, but they are the most notable. It's also interesting to note some of the game's artwork was done by Joe Mad. I'm not going to pronounce his last name, I tried, I gave up, but he used to draw for Marvel, working on comics like Deadpool, Astonishing X-Men, and Avenging Spider-Man. So it's safe to say with the talent they brought in, the game's presentation is something special. I think its presentation is second to none and one of the better looking PlayStation 1 games. Being a 3D beat-em-up, seemingly inspired by games in the vein of Streets of Rage, Gekido is a living, breathing embodiment of true action. From the mechanics to the character designs, Gekido is an adrenaline-filled romp as you are on your way to save a young girl named Angela who's being kidnapped.
You cannot be serious!
You will set out on your journey to rescue her by immediately being thrown into the action. This is where Gekido absolutely obliterates just about everything else in the genre, at least from what I've played, and that is its combat. My God, is its combat good. It is so smooth and responsive. Hits feel weighty and pretty much on par with any great fighting game. The combos are simple but not brain dead. They're not too complex that you won't be able to do the inputs, but not too simple that you feel like you're doing nothing. Being able to kick, punch, grapple, and enter a rage mode, and even lock onto your enemies. Looking at you, One Piece. Furthermore, we can pick up weapons, objects, and food off the ground to help in our battle against these villainous hordes. The level design itself helps play a part in making the combat feel so good. Although a decent size, the levels aren't overly large, at least in terms of the amount of space you can run around. This means you're generally going to be getting your hands on your opponents more often than not. With the exception of the time spent between walking locations to where the fights start and the old PlayStation 1 loading screens, which can take a hot minute to load, the action is pretty much non-stop, making this one of the most addictive games I've ever played. However, it is important to note this game is quite difficult and you will probably die a lot. It's not perfect when it comes to the combat. You will miss some hits that you think you shouldn't have, and sometimes you will just take damage and there's nothing you can do about it. Overall, this game has a lot of challenge. It's not to say it's anything that feels insurmountable, but it's definitely not something you'll breeze through. Taking damage isn't the only way you will fail, however. You will notice there is a time limit up the top, meaning if you don't keep pushing the pace as time goes by, you will lose. This is a good and a bad thing. Good because it keeps you pushing to keep the action going, and bad because it adds a lot of anxiety while you're playing. You can pick up items in order to increase your time, but understand the game's hit detection might cause you a little bit of stress. So along with the enemy that is time, we also have a lot of enemies to fight. We have a pretty good variety here. We don't get a ton of just palette swaps, although some enemies can feel very similar. Also, the AI of the enemies is a little bit interesting as they seem to be gung-ho about picking up any item that drops so you can't have it. Gekido has a lot of locations for you to visit. We get to go to cities, to subways, streets, boats, and a whole bunch of other places. This basically means there's always something interesting going on screen, and if you're someone who has a hard time focusing, I think this game will keep your attention. As mentioned, the game does have an anime-inspired aesthetic, and it shows in the level design, while also showing in the character design. Gekido has several playable characters, with there being 4 main that you'll play as, being Travis, Ushi, Tetsu, and Sonya Blade. I mean Michelle. Personally, I love all the character designs, some for more reasons than others. Look, I'm down bad, give me a break, I look like a thumb. So with having access to all these characters, how do they differentiate them? Well, each character has their own fighting style, making them feel unique. This makes having to do multiple playthroughs a little more enjoyable instead of having to be a grind, especially if you want to unlock all the characters in all the game modes. In terms of game modes, we have 2 out the box, with 4 being more unlocked via completing certain challenges. The game modes for Gekido include Urban Fighter, which is our story mode, Arena Battle, a versus mode, Shadow Fighter, a standard fighting game mode, Survivor, as you would expect, Team Battle, same as Arena, but you can have teams, and finally Street Gang Battle, which is kinda like Team Battle, but you can have CPU allies. This definitely makes me feel nostalgic for games of this era though, solely because games these days tend to launch with either missing features or hardly any. I love the fact that we have a lot on offer here. Instead of just being a 3D fighter, we have access to a fighting game, just a normal one-on-one, as well as a party game. I remember many times playing this game with a friend down the street where we would just sit there and either try to beat the story or just beat the crap out of each other. Interestingly, during my research for this video, I found out Gekido managed to get a sequel. I didn't know this growing up. Titled Gekido Kintaro's Revenge, and originally released for the Game Boy Advance. Kintaro's Revenge is definitely closer to the original Streets of Rage game, and it was fortunate enough to get a remake and re-release not too long ago for the Nintendo Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. It's actually available on Steam, which is pretty cool. They did have one more sequel planned, called Gekido the Dark Angel, but unfortunately it was cancelled. Originally planning to release on the PlayStation Portable, it was going to be a hack and slash style game. Nap's team actually released a video on their YouTube demonstrating the prototype of the game, and it's a real shame because you could see what they were building. It probably wouldn't rival games like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, but I think if the game had come out, it would have had a chance to make Gekido as a series stand out amongst its peers. All in all, Gekido is an amazing little game, and I think it would do well to get a remake or a remaster, especially with today's modern hardware. Being able to play online where you could sit there and have a 2-player run through the campaign just while sitting on a couch or just even online, being on voice chat, it'd be great fun. Even though yes, I know it's a bit of a budget release, I think the game is truly something special. I remember getting this game at the peak of Australian culture, Kmart, for around 20 bucks, back in about 2002. And I know I've got some nostalgia goggles on when it comes to this game, and I'm probably being a little too nice to it overall, but I honestly can't recommend it enough, especially if you're a fan of B-grade action movies. This game is the embodiment of that. Even upon replaying it and putting hours and hours in, I have enjoyed every single second. So with that, lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, thank you so much for watching. That brings us to the end of another video. I know this game is definitely not the most popular one out there, and I appreciate you watching. If you have played it, share your stories with me below, or if you have a favourite 3D arena fighter that you would like to talk about, or just 3D fighter in general, share it. Yeah, stay safe out there. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.